Hi, everyone. Welcome to our demo of the Everbridge Critical Event Management Platform. Thanks for joining us today. Our presenter is Greg Mumma, Product Marketing Manager at Everbridge. At the end of the demo, Greg will be taking your questions through the chat box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. And now, over to you, Greg.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Hello, everyone. Nice to be speaking to you today. I'm going to take you quickly through the critical event management platform from Everbridge, and we're going to start with a brief description of what we define as a critical event and what the steps are we believe to manage critical events successfully would be for an average organization. First off, a critical event is any type of event that impacts your organization. That can be a physical security event like a protest or a hazardous materials spill or a weather event. It can be an IT outage, essentially anything that damages or has the potential to impact the operations of your business is a critical event from our perspective. Now, if we look to the right of this screen, we see a wheel with 4 pie slices on it, and these are the steps that we advocate for managing your way successfully through any critical event in your organization. And it really doesn't matter so much what the event is. There are 4 basic steps that you're going to want to perform to manage your way through any given event. The first is assessment. The idea here is to understand where critical events are occurring around your assets and to just come to an initial awareness and understanding of what that event is all about. So it's being alerted to risks that are near your assets. The second item is location-based, and this is very important for 2 reasons. Number one, you want to locate assets that could potentially be impacted by the critical event, whether those are people or buildings or pipelines or roadways, infrastructure. So you want to locate the things that are at risk, and you also want to locate responders, so people and teams that could potentially respond to this event. The third stage is taking action, and that's typically acting to mitigate the risk or to triage and deal with the aftermath of whatever that particular event was. And from Everbridge's perspective, action is a very broad category. This can be anything from just sending a message to a few stakeholders to let them know what's happened, all the way out to sending out a full-blown crisis management plan for multiple teams of people, all who need to perform unique tasks in order to respond to the event. So action is a key aspect of critical event management, and we'll try to get into that a little bit today as I walk you through. Last but certainly not least is analytics. This is understanding how you did when you responded to any given event, identifying gaps in your process, and essentially addressing those gaps so that later, the next time another event of this nature happens, you won't have that gap in the process. Analytics really provides you with a route toward continuous improvement for managing critical events. So let's get started with one of the challenges, one of several challenges that we see frequently when we walk in to talk to a potential customer for the first time. Typically, it's a challenge that looks something like what you see here. Now, just to level set us here, you don't have to have a command center environment to use critical event management. This is just a useful vehicle for me to explain how critical event management works. So even if you don't have a room that looks like this, that's okay. We have plenty of customers that use regional security managers in a distributed model as opposed to having everybody in one control room like this. Anyway, the problem that we see is often a problem of information. You might be monitoring social media with TweetDeck or one of the paid tools that's out there. You might be monitoring weather, whether you're using weather.com or just monitoring on TV. You might be monitoring the location of assets like travelers or buildings. The problem is tying all of that information together so that when somebody posts something on social media pertaining to a weather event, that may be near one or more of your assets, all of that information needs to get tied together. And unfortunately, in today's environment, often that falls on the shoulders of the people that are working in this particular environment. So as a person, I have to have the right triggers to inform me that a risk event is going on. And then I have to manually, in my head, correlate that event to the assets and the potential responses. So we think there's a better way to do this. We think we can help you speed the process to identify and respond to appropriate risks. And level setting for that is really a common operating picture. We think you need to create a single unified picture of your organization that shows you all of the assets that you care about. Again, whether that's a person or a building or an infrastructure or a roadway, whatever the case may be. And in that common operating picture, you need to also monitor for all the different types of risk you are concerned about. That to me is really table stakes for an effective critical event management practice. You want to be able to have everything that you're concerned about in one single place, so you can respond to risks regardless of what different types of assets you're protecting as quickly as possible. Now, one of Everbridge's core strengths has always been communication. We think it's important to be able to get data out of the platform. It's just as important as being able to put data in. So we've provided a number of vehicles for you to do that. First, the Everbridge platform offers a variety of messaging capabilities, which I think some of you may be familiar with. We can get a message just about anywhere in the world to just about anyone through close to 100 different modalities. So the importance of distributing information can't be left behind, and that's certainly something that Everbridge has expertise in. Beyond that, we think it's important to be able to keep teams informed, and we'll provide things like these dashboards or channels that you're seeing here. A channel or dashboard provides roll-up statistics that are appropriate for a particular job or a particular role. If you're focused on communication, you may want to see how your communications are going and what messages you're sending and what your response rates are for those messages. If you're responsible for managing a crisis management plan, you may want to have roll-up statistics about all the current active crises and so on and so forth. We have about 10 different dashboards which can all be customized to your specifications. So getting data out of CEM and to the organization where it can actually be useful is very important to us. So let's focus now on a use case. We want to talk about a hurricane as a use case. And I'm going to change our command center view to focus on a particular storm. Now, you may recognize this storm. It came through last year and hit Wilmington, North Carolina. I believe it was called Florence. Florence is going to be our use case that we walk through today. And I'm going to bounce back and forth a little bit between this and the product itself to give you a chance to see both flavors or both things here in the presentation. So what we've done first off is focus the command center on this hurricane. And that means that these channels, these dashboards, have updated and refreshed to show you content that's specific to this event, whether it's sort of roll-up risk event data like this or communications data that's specifically focused on your communications around this particular event. This is the kind of capability that focusing the command center can do, and that's something that's actually built into the CEM product. So let's walk through how we would manage a hurricane from beginning to end using the CEM platform. First is awareness. First is assessment, right? We need to be aware that an event is happening that has the potential to impact our assets. And that can, with a hurricane is typically well known. We know it's coming days in advance. So, you're going to be aware that the system is approaching. However, one of the first things you may struggle with is identifying all of the assets that are in the particular area, in this case, the impact radius of the hurricane. And what we're looking at is one of the models that comes along with CEM. It shows me wind predicted strength at any given point during the hurricane's path. So what I can see here is red is going to be my hurricane force, yellow is my tropical storm force, and this green area is my subtropical force winds. What we notice right away is that we can see all of the assets that are potentially at risk. This happens to be a screenshot from a restaurant company. They have a variety of restaurants in the Charlotte area that we can see are going to potentially be impacted. Any type of asset that you're tracking through CEM will appear on this map. So for example, if I have a person, a lone worker, or a traveler who's moving through the area, I would also see those individuals in my common operating picture, and I would see exactly where they were in relation to the risk event. Now, most events, typically you have a plan when you're dealing with a large scale event. You may not. If not, we'd certainly recommend that you build one, but you probably have a plan. It may be kept in an online tool. It may be kept in paper binders. Whatever the case is, typically for a large event like a hurricane, if you know these events are going to impact you, you have some kind of plan in place. Now, with the CEM platform, we have a solution that allows you to digitize those plans, basically put them into the system and launch them whenever an event of a particular type occurs. A plan consists of several different elements. It consists of task lists that need to be distributed to individuals or to teams who need to perform tasks in order to prepare or mitigate the risk of this particular event. We have communications, which can be sent. These can be templated and pre-planned communications that can be sent. And you would use those to communicate out to employees, stakeholders, partners, whatever the case may be, to inform them about what you were doing and potentially what you needed them to do to prepare for the situation. Another capability is the ability to attach supporting documentation. So for example, if I am a retail store manager and there's a list of tasks that I need to perform, and that might include installing the storm shutters on the windows, I might need instructions for how to install the storm shutters, and that could be attached to the critical event or to the task list and distributed directly to my mobile device or my computer. So having a plan is important, and we make it easy for you to create that plan and then distribute the appropriate tasks and communications to people as they need to see them. As we're preparing for the storm, this is where CEM really becomes your friend and automation really becomes your helper. Now, what we see here are different tools that are provided within the platform to help your teams collaborate as you're preparing for the storm. The first is the ability to provide feedback to the organization. So let's say you get a task list through our mobile app, and one of the tasks is secure all the windows. Well, if you can't secure a window in the face of a hurricane, that could be a problem. So you need to provide feedback back to the organization that, hey, I've got an issue here and I need help with this. So we provide a mobile app that offers you the ability to do exactly that. You can take images, you can record video, you can send it back to the organization, and that'll give the people who need to make decisions about these sort of things better information about what it is that your problem is, and of course, how they can mitigate that event. You're going to need to communicate with employees. If you have a hurricane approaching an area, you may decide to close your facilities for the duration of the storm, and you need to keep your employees updated on what it is you're going to do. And of course, communication can be with anybody inside or even outside the organization. So if you need to let stakeholders know, if you need to talk to your suppliers in your supply chain, then you can leverage the CEM platform to do all of that as part of an integrated process. And then as your team is actively collaborating, you have tools within the platform that help you do that. We have one-touch conference bridges. You can literally tap a link in an SMS or a button in our mobile app and join a conference bridge with your teammates. We have the option to do a secure online chat as well. One tap on that and you'll be joined to a secure chat with your colleagues, and you guys can chat. That's all encrypted and stored in the platform, so there's not a risk of that chat information leaving the platform. So collaboration is key, and we provide a number of different tools to help you do that, not only while you're preparing for the storm, but as the storm moves through and then in the triage afterward. Now, as the storm gets closer, you're going to want to stay informed. And one thing that happens often with hurricanes is evacuations. This is actually a screenshot from Irma a couple of years ago, and this is Daytona Beach, Florida that you're looking at right now. Now, what you see is I've got traffic cameras and I've got traffic conditions lit up in this view. And the red line is I-95 northbound out of Florida. If we look over at our traffic cams, this is the northbound lane of I-95 coming from these two cameras right here. We can see exactly what the situation is. That could be really important. You may want to guide people in how to evacuate, and this type of information can enable you to do that up to the minute. We also provide lots of good contextual information like the location of shelters, FEMA evacuation routes, public safety locations, hospitals, information that you may need to provide to people that are in the area is all available within the platform, down to the phone number and address of each individual thing that you may need to send them to. Once the storm arrives, you have a number of challenges, and this is where the visualization component of CEM really shines. I can take data from sources like the National Hurricane Center and bring it right into my common operating picture. For example, this wind probability model shows me the probability of hurricane force winds extending out from the storm. The National Hurricane Center updates this frequently, and as it's updated by the NHC, we receive the updates, the wind model will move, and you'll always be able to see who and what is in that potential area for the highest winds. Storm surge modeling, we have FEMA storm surge tables for category 1 through 5 in the United States. I can monitor what the expected flooding is. That's the boxes in orange here. And I can also look at what the storm surge is actually doing from the live storm itself. And that's data that's captured through the NHC as well. So the key here is actually staying informed for the duration of the storm. This is going to help you later when you need to triage, when you need to go into the area where the storm hit, and you need to know who and what you should focus on first in terms of your wellness checks, in terms of business continuity plans, and getting things back to normal after the storm. One great feature of the platform is that it can act like a force multiplier. You probably are familiar with the fact that hurricanes spawn tornadoes. It's just unfortunately a part of life. And the platform can do things like identify a tornado warning from the National Weather Service and then automatically communicate out to everybody that's in that cone that, hey, there's a tornado on the ground in your area, you need to seek shelter. And this has a ton of value for our customers, frankly. Instead of individuals having to go through phone trees and make calls, the system will automatically identify everybody in the area and automatically notify them that there's a tornado on the ground. This helps you focus. You can focus not on the people who say they're okay because they're okay, but you can focus on the people who have come back and said they need help, or the people who you haven't heard from at all. Those are the people that in a risk situation are the ones that are probably going to be your first priority in terms of wellness checks. So we enable you to document that everybody who's okay says they're okay, and then to actually focus on the individuals who may need your assistance. Now, we think communication in a two-way nature is very important. You've already seen me mention the ability to provide feedback to the organization about emergencies. I'd argue that flooding in a lobby like this would be an emergency in any situation except a hurricane. In this case, the individuals are reporting it as a non-emergency event. And then there is the whole idea of having an employee in trouble be able to either access emergency services locally or tap an SOS. When the employee does that in our mobile application, we'll start immediately sharing live audio and video with your security folks, with your business continuity folks, so you see what that person sees, you hear what that person hears, and that person can actually speak to you speakerphone-wise through the mobile application itself. Now, no event happens in a vacuum. Particularly hurricanes and other large-scale events are they're gonna create or invoke the interest of your stakeholders, of your C-level suite, and we think it's important to be able to keep them informed as well. One of the big challenges we saw in our customer base was we have a hard time keeping people informed. We have to take phone calls, we have to write reports for people. We decided one good way to do that would be to provide specific dashboards or channels for those stakeholders, and also to provide the ability to create what's called a situation report. The sit rep will give anybody who runs it up-to-the-minute information about what's happening, about what tasks have been performed, what communications have been sent, and so on and so forth. So rather than reacting when executives call you, it becomes possible to be proactive, to provide them with a channel, to provide them with the ability to run that sit rep, or just frankly to send them the sit rep whenever they request it. Keeping your stakeholders informed is key, and it's a natural process that's delivered out of the platform. And once the storm moves away from the area, the first piece of, I'll call it good news, even though this is a hurricane, but the first piece of good news is that you have insight into where the worst of the damage may be. And that gives you a higher capability, a higher degree of accuracy when you execute your business continuity or disaster recovery plan. You know where to focus first. And you can, of course, use the task list capability for your field teams. You can send them the appropriate tasks to triage and check on the individuals they need to check on, and they can perform those tasks. Everything is tracked, everything is logged within the platform, and you've got the ability to know where the worst damage was and where you need to focus first in your recovery operations. Now, last but not least, certainly analytics. We want to record data as we're moving through this event, and we want to be able to analyze that data later. This is just one example of that capability from within Everbridge. This is analysis on a message. It shows me how many people responded to this event, and it shows me how many didn't or how many confirmed late. Now, down further in this web page is actually a log of every single person who was contacted. It tells you when they were contacted. It tells you how they were contacted. If you use multiple modes like a phone call and an SMS and an email, it logs all of those, and it tells you which one the person received or which one the person responded to. So this is a good example of gauging the effectiveness of your communications throughout the event. And for every message you sent, you'll have this kind of statistical information, and you can see what messages went out well and were well received, and maybe those messages that were less useful, you could also identify those from this type of data. So that's a very rapid review of a use case, hurricane use case with Everbridge CEM. There are 4 main use cases that we support as a product: business continuity, employee life safety, supply chain security, and information technology challenges. So if you're an organization that has challenges in any one of these areas, chances are good that we can help you, that we can provide a solution that's going to help you mitigate the risk of these events and respond to these events faster and better when you can. I've just got a couple minutes left before we start taking questions. So I want to very quickly show you guys what I mean by a common operating picture. This is the common operating picture provided in critical event management. And what you're seeing on the map, all of the blue dots are my assets. Those happen to be building assets, and I can add contacts or people assets to the picture as well. And when I do that, some countries in here are going to change colors. That's indicative of how many contacts are in any given country. So whether I need to know the location of a person or a location, a facility, even things like roadways and ports, like this roadway example here, all of that's brought into this one common operating picture. All of the red items are risk events. Those are risks that have happened close enough to one of my assets that I may need to know. I may want to investigate that situation and come to some kind of conclusion as to whether or not I need to do anything. Let's take this fire weather watch in Colorado as an example. When I select this event, it's going to show me immediately what's in the area. In this case, I have 2 employees that are actually in that area, and it's going to give me the details. In this case, this is a fire weather watch from the National Weather Service. Now, from here, I can do a couple of things. I can launch communications. So if I need to communicate with these people or with stakeholders, I can launch a communications plan. This will use templates or ad hoc communication for me to inform people about the situation. The other thing I can do is launch a crisis management plan. You know, remember in the example I gave with the hurricane, I launched a plan that allowed me to tell different people what to do to prepare for the storm, for example. This is a potential plan that might fit this particular situation. If I needed to do a facility evacuation, for example, I'd have tasks here. If I needed to send communications, I'd have an incident here that I could send communications. And if I needed to provide documentation, this happens to be a link to the OSHA website where someone can read about the preparation steps when you need to prepare for an evacuation. So all of this data available from one common operating picture where I can take action to mitigate that risk. Last piece I want to show you today, just a simple demonstration. This is my mobile phone you're looking at. These are the messages that may be sent. For example, this top message goes to my crisis management team. And in here, you can see at the bottom, the button I can tap to join a conference bridge. And at the top, the button that I can tap to go to my secure chat. So when this message goes out to the team, I get this call-in information, I get this secure chat button, and I can join my colleagues. The other thing I want to show you in the mobile app is the task lists that are actually performed. So if we look at this active assailant event, for example, I can see the tasks that I need to perform. And I can go into a task, like I'm going to tap on task 3 here, and then I can note that I've started this task. I can also add comments and provide commentary, and every task from every person is logged and tracked back in the critical event management platform. So at any time, I can go see where I am in terms of progress for any of these tasks. Okay, I know that's a bit of a whirlwind tour. There's certainly a lot more we could dive into, but I wanted to give you a sense of the capabilities of critical event management today. At this point, I'm good to take questions. Kathy, if you are good to do that.
Great, thanks, Greg. So if you could please type your questions into the chat box. And we do have our first question. What type of weather coverage do you have? Do you have weather coverage outside the US?
That's a great question. We do. We have global weather coverage using the NOAA forecast model, and we have live radar for various sites around the world. That's going to include most of North America, Europe, Japan, and Australia. We do get storm boxes from the National Weather Service, so that's why you're seeing this information right here. And plans are in the works to receive the same type of storm box information for both Canadian and European weather as well. That's something that we'll be adding to the platform early next year. So in terms of the different types of weather data, the storm boxes for North America, and then you can see a lot of different types of data that I can present here. For example, if I do radar, in North America, we should light up with a cloud layer here in a moment that's going to show me where active storms are and weather fronts are. So thank you. That's a great question.
Great. Our next question is, can you incorporate access control alarms and badging data?
Yes. Now, it depends a little bit on what you're trying to do there. If you want to use that information to track the location of people, like see when somebody is badged into a building so you know they're there, and if something bad happens, you know they're actually at the building, they're not just assigned to work at the building that day. That's a capability that's part of CEM. That's actually a part of our Safety Connection product, which is also integrated into this. That's how I can see all of my people, my contact information. In fact, we have out-of-the-box connectors for Linnell, Secure, and I believe S2 as well. So if you've got one of those systems, we can actually plug into it out of the box. If you don't, we have a generic importer that we can set up with your access control system, and it'll just import the deltas, import the changed log or the changed badge-ins every 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is that you specify. So whatever access control system you have, as long as it can output a list of people that have badged into the building, we should be able to get that into the platform. The other thing we see sometimes with access control is people want certain alarms to be represented in Visual Command Center here as an alert, and we can do that as well. Visual Command Center has an open API, so if the access control system can send a message via web service, we can receive that and generate an alert based on that. So there's a lot to that. It's probably more than the 1 minute that I just took to explain it. But if you want more details, then by all means reach out and contact us, and we can certainly help with that.
Okay, next question. Do you track the location of employees?
Good question. We don't like to use the term track because of the big brother-ish nature that it implies. We prefer to use the term locate. And the reason I say that, it's actually pretty straightforward. You know, most of us on the line today are probably security professionals or affiliated with that field. None of us has time to go into the system and turn on the mobile app and say, I want to see if Bob left his office at 2 o'clock on Friday to go play golf. It's just not what we're about. So that's typically a concern. Privacy is typically a concern. And to kind of net that out, we have a number of ways we can help you gently explain to your organization that, no, this is not a tool that's going to be used to monitor where you are at all times. It's a tool that's going to tell us if you happen to be in an area where something bad happens, so we can reach out and let you know. So we can locate, having said that, we can locate people through the mobile application. And that's a capability that's provided. The user can turn that capability off through the device if they want to. And of course, if you're using company distributed devices, then you have the ability to turn that on and force it to stay on. So depending on your situation, there's different ways to sort of mitigate the concerns around privacy. But yes, generally speaking, we can use the mobile app to locate somebody anywhere in the world.
Okay. The next question, can you start a notification via the app out to employee locations, or do you always have to use the website?
You can absolutely start a message through the app. Funny enough, there's actually a separate app that's specifically for message senders. And I'll see if I can just pull it up on my screen here. I'm logging into it right now. So this is the app that is distributed to anybody who wants to send a message and has the appropriate authority. So when you purchase a package from Everbridge, this app comes along. It's just part of what we provide. And I can send incidents or notifications. I can actually look at the details for events that were sent. Things like the response rates are also provided here in the mobile app. So this is a feature of Everbridge mass notification and incident communication. You get this regardless of whether or not you use other components of the CEM suite. So I think the answer to that question is a yes.
Okay, one more question before we go. Do you have derailment delay reports for railroads?
That's a good one. If our RIMC, if our intelligence organization picks that up, and usually they do, then we can report on that. It's kind of like utilities in that the data for that seems to be not necessarily all aggregated into one place. It tends to be the domain of the specific company or companies that use a specific set of lines, for example. So I think it's something we can do. It's something that we haven't developed a formal method for at this point in time, simply because on a global basis, that data doesn't seem to be very well consolidated. So I think in all honesty, the answer to that is partly your results may vary based on where in the world the derailment occurs.
Great, thank you, Greg. That's all the time we have for questions. I'm going to thank everyone for joining us. If your question wasn't answered during the session, we'll follow up with you after the webinar, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.